He had everything: money, power, success. But one thing he could never buy: a family. She walked away, suitcase in hand. Their little boy cried, "Mom, why did Daddy make you cry?" And him? Benjamin Carter, on his knees, too late to undo the damage. Before we begin, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories can reach. Benjamin Carter wasn't the kind of man people felt sorry for. In fact, he was the kind of man most people admired, or quietly envied. At 38, he had built an empire, owned a sprawling estate behind towering iron gates, and drove cars sleek enough to turn heads wherever he went. Money, power, respect, he had it all. Except for one thing: the simple joy of coming home to someone who cared. That morning, the city was wrapped in a thick, gray fog. Streets lay quiet under the dull haze of winter. Benjamin gripped the steering wheel of his black luxury car, driving aimlessly through back roads and suburbs he usually passed by without notice. He wasn't sure what he was looking for. Maybe a break from the suffocating walls of success, or just somewhere no one knew his name. He pulled up outside a small coffee shop tucked between an old auto repair garage and a laundromat. The sign was faded, the wooden window frames chipped and weathered. There was nothing fancy about the place. And maybe that's exactly why he walked in. Inside, the warm glow of soft yellow lights spilled over worn wooden tables. The air smelled of fresh coffee and toasted bread. A few locals sat quietly, nursing their cups, lost in thought. No one looked up when Benjamin stepped through the door. Then he saw her. Emma Walker. Not too young to be naive, not too old to be defeated. She wore a simple uniform, sleeves slightly creased, her hair tied back in a loose ponytail. But what caught Benjamin's attention weren't the clothes, or even the tired lines around her eyes. It was the fire behind them. Determined eyes. Eyes that had seen struggle, but still held their ground. Benjamin slid into a table by the window, glanced half-heartedly at the menu posted on the wall, and ordered without really looking. An iced espresso. Emma approached the table, pen and notepad in hand. Calm. Direct. "Sorry, we don't have that. Would you like to choose something else?" Benjamin raised an eyebrow, caught off guard by the blunt response. Most people would have rushed to apologize. Most people would have recognized him, adjusted their tone, softened their words. But not her. He looked up fully now, locking eyes with her, a slight edge creeping into his voice. "Do you know who I am?" Emma didn't flinch. She didn't blink. Instead, she offered the faintest smile, steady and unshaken. "If you're looking to be treated like royalty, sir, maybe you should head back to your castle." The words hung there, bold and unapologetic. For a moment, the air between them felt charged, taut like a wire pulled tight. And then Benjamin laughed. A real laugh. Deep, rough, unexpected, the kind of laugh he hadn't felt rise up in him for a very long time. It had been ages since anyone had spoken to him like that. Ages since someone had looked him in the eye without fear, without flattery, without any need to impress. There she stood, a waitress in a humble little cafe on the foggy edge of town, holding her ground like no one else ever had. Leaning back in his chair, still smiling, Benjamin felt something stir inside him. A spark. A warmth he hadn't realized he was missing. And he knew. This wouldn't be the last time he stepped into this place. Now let me ask you, what do you think makes a man who has everything still feel so empty inside? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd really love to hear what you think. The next day, the fog had lifted, but the weight in Benjamin Carter's chest had not. He found himself back at that same little cafe on the edge of town, the one place where his name didn't seem to hold any power, where the walls weren't lined with polished marble, but with the quiet grit of everyday life. There were no grand chandeliers here, no whispers of Mr. Carter following him around, just the clink of coffee cups and the soft scrape of chairs across worn wooden floors. And there she was again. Emma Walker. Her sleeves rolled up, hair pulled back in the same loose ponytail, moving between tables as the last few customers trickled out. Tired eyes, focused hands. A woman who had learned the art of staying steady, even when life kept trying to knock her off balance. Benjamin stood near the doorway for a moment, watching her wipe down a table with slow, deliberate care. There was something about the way she carried herself, shoulders squared, back straight, that spoke louder than words. Finally, he approached. "I'd like to talk with you," he said, his voice low but direct. Emma glanced up, surprised but not flustered. She tucked the rag into her apron and crossed her arms lightly across her chest, keeping a respectful distance. "I was wondering when you'd come back," she replied, eyes steady on his. Benjamin nodded once. No smile this time. He wasn't here for small talk. "I want to offer you a job," he said plainly, "at my home, helping manage the estate." The words hung there between them. Unexpected, heavy. Emma stared at him for a beat, then narrowed her eyes, her expression sharp. "A job? You're serious?" She shook her head lightly, incredulous. "I don't have experience running some fancy mansion, and I'm not the kind of woman who lets herself get bought." Her voice didn't rise, she didn't snap, but her words hit like steel wrapped in velvet, firm, unshaken. Benjamin didn't flinch. He had expected the pushback. "I'm not offering this because I think you're easy to buy," he answered calmly, meeting her gaze. "I'm offering because you're the kind of person who speaks her mind. You don't flatter. You don't bend just because someone waves money in your face. I respect that." He took a slow breath, choosing his words carefully, because for once, this wasn't about business. "I need someone who doesn't play games, someone who knows how to stand their ground. And from what I've seen, you're that person." Emma's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't look away. But behind the fire in her eyes, there was something else. Something softer, more vulnerable. She thought of Lucas. Her little boy, 5 years old, with a smile too bright for the kind of life they were living right now. She had spent so long trying to shield him from the struggle, from the worry she wore like a second skin. Emma knew exactly what Benjamin Carter was, a powerful man who was used to getting his way. But at that moment, her mind wasn't on him. It was on her son. The thought of finally being able to give Lucas a stable roof over his head, a place where the bills weren't always overdue, where dinner wasn't whatever she could scrape together after her shift. She drew in a slow, steadying breath. "I'm not saying yes because of you," she said, voice quiet but firm. "I'm saying yes for my son, for Lucas." Benjamin nodded again, accepting the terms without argument. "I understand." But Emma wasn't finished. She leaned in slightly, locking eyes with him one more time. "Just so we're clear, I'm not here to make your life easier. I'm here to make my son's life better." And with that, she turned away, leaving Benjamin standing there, watching her, thinking that maybe, just maybe, this woman wasn't the kind of person who could ever be owned. But she might be the one person strong enough to hold her own in his world. Now let me ask you, if you were in Emma's shoes, would you have taken that offer? Would you have chosen stability for your child, even if it meant stepping into the lion's den? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Write, "I'd take the chance if you'd accept," or "I'd walk away if you think Emma deserves something better. I'm curious to know. What would you have done?" The Blackwood estate stood tall against the sky, its stone walls casting long shadows across the perfectly manicured grounds. Inside, the hallways were quiet, but not peaceful. No, there was a certain tension in the air, the kind that follows change. And change had just walked through the front door. Emma Walker stood in the grand entryway, holding herself steady beneath the weight of the mansion's gaze. She wasn't easily shaken. Not by marble floors or winding staircases, not by the intimidating size of the chandelier overhead. She was here for one reason, and one reason only: to build a better life for her son. But someone else had been here long before her, someone who knew these hallways like the back of her hand. Clara Hastings, the head housekeeper, a woman whose presence filled a room before she even spoke. Polished, poised, always put together, her hair smoothed into place, her uniform crisp, a small gold pin fastened perfectly at the collar. Clara approached, slow and deliberate, with the smile of someone who'd learned how to hide sharp edges beneath soft tones. "Oh, you must be the new girl." Her voice was smooth as silk, warm enough to feel polite, but cool enough to make the air between them shift. "If you ever need a little advice on how to survive around here, I'm always happy to help." Her words dripped like honey, but they carried the weight of a warning. Emma, standing tall, met Clara's gaze head-on. She offered a polite nod, her voice calm, steady. "Thank you. But I'm just here to do my job, and take care of my son. Nothing more." Clara's smile didn't falter. But behind those perfectly painted lips, something stirred. An unspoken challenge, perhaps. She tilted her head slightly, as if studying Emma the way one might study a crack in fine china. "Well," Clara murmured, stepping just a little closer, lowering her voice to something intimate, but not quite friendly. "The last thing I'd want is for anyone to feel out of place." Then, as smoothly as she'd appeared, Clara turned away, her heels tapping softly against the polished floor. But the sting of her words remained. It wasn't long before the whispers began, soft, subtle, like seeds scattered on the wind. "Quite the quick arrival, don't you think? And right into Mr. Carter's home. How fortunate for her. I wonder if she's as innocent as she looks." Clara didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need to accuse directly. She knew the power of suggestion, the power of planting a doubt, then letting it grow. And somewhere in the quiet spaces of the mansion, those doubts began to take root. You see, Clara wasn't the kind of woman who threw stones. She simply pointed out where the cracks already were. And waited. "Now tell me, have you ever met someone like Clara? The kind of person who smiles while setting the stage for trouble? If you have, leave a comment below and tell me. How did you handle it?" The mansion, as grand as it was, had its quiet corners, places where the marble floors didn't echo so loudly, where the world felt a little softer beneath the weight of all that wealth. And it was in those quieter moments that Benjamin Carter began to notice her. Emma. Not as the new hire, not as the single mother who had, so far, handled her work with quiet resolve and unshakable grace, but as something more, something he couldn't quite name. He didn't watch her the way a man watches a woman he desires. No, this was different. This was quieter, deeper. The kind of watching that happens when you're trying not to care, but failing. From the balcony of his study, Benjamin often caught sight of her moving through the grounds, sleeves rolled up, hair falling loose from its tie as she worked. There was a rhythm to her days, a calm persistence that no one seemed to notice but him. She didn't complain. Not when Clara gave her the harder tasks, not when the other staff kept their distance, whispering in corners. Emma simply kept moving forward, focused, steady. And then there was that small moment. The kind of moment that doesn't seem like much on the surface, but stays with you long after it passes. It was late afternoon. Emma, arms full of fresh linens, reached for a glass water jug perched precariously on a shelf. The cloth slipped. The jug tumbled. She gasped, instinctively reaching to catch it, but too late. Before the glass could shatter on the stone floor, a hand darted out. Strong, sure. Benjamin. He caught the jug in one swift motion, steady as if he'd done it 100 times before. Emma froze, eyes wide, not out of fear, but surprise. She hadn't even realized he was there. For a moment, their eyes met, hers soft, startled. His unreadable, though something behind them flickered. Something too honest for a man so carefully guarded. "Thank you," she said quietly, voice steady but touched with genuine gratitude. Benjamin gave the faintest nod, setting the jug back into place. But his gaze dropped quickly, and without another word, he turned away, walking off with the stiff posture of a man who refused to acknowledge how deeply that small exchange had unsettled him. It should have ended there, but that wasn't the last time he found himself watching her. A few days later, near sunset, Benjamin paused by the edge of the garden, a place he rarely wandered. The air was soft with the scent of lavender and roses, the fading sunlight draping everything in gold. And there she was. Emma, seated cross-legged beneath the flowering archway, a storybook open across her lap. Lucas, her little boy, curled beside her, eyes wide with wonder as she read aloud, her voice gentle, playful. Every so often, Lucas would burst into laughter, and Emma's smile, so real, so unguarded, lit up her entire face. Benjamin stood still, unseen behind the trimmed hedges, watching this quiet scene unfold. His chest tightened unexpectedly, as if the sight had knocked the air right out of him. It wasn't the beauty of the garden that caught him. It wasn't even the sound of her laughter. It was the warmth between mother and child, the simple tenderness of a moment he'd never known for himself. A kind of love that couldn't be bought, couldn't be negotiated, only given. And for the first time in a very long time, Benjamin Carter felt something shift. It wasn't desire, it was longing, the kind that comes when a man begins to realize that the life he built, no matter how impressive, might be missing the one thing he never knew he truly needed, and he turned away before Emma or Lucas could ever know he'd been there. Now let me ask you, have you ever witnessed a moment so simple, so pure, that it caught you off guard, left you wondering about the life you thought you wanted? If so, share your story below. I'd love to hear it. It was late, long after the dishes had been cleared, after the last soft clink of silverware had faded into the hush of the mansion's stone walls. The house was quiet, but not at peace. Benjamin Carter stood at the threshold of the sitting room, one hand tucked casually into his pocket, the other resting against the doorframe. His eyes, sharp as ever, watched Emma where she sat alone at the far end of the room, finishing the last of her evening tea. He didn't bother with pleasantries. Not tonight. "Emma," he began, voice calm, too calm. "I have a proposal." She looked up slowly, setting the cup down, giving him her full attention. But she said nothing. She waited. Benjamin took a few measured steps forward, stopping just short of the soft glow cast by the fireplace. "I'd like you to consider marriage." There was no warmth in the word as it left his lips, no hesitation either, just business, delivered with the same efficiency he used to close deals in boardrooms. Emma blinked once. Her expression remained unreadable. He continued, his tone steady, almost clinical. "It would be an arrangement, mutually beneficial. You would have financial security, your son's future guaranteed. And I would have—" He paused, as if choosing the right term. "A respectable household, a stable family image. The kind of thing my board and my family seem to think I'm lacking." The air between them thickened. Emma rose from her seat, slow and deliberate, as if giving herself the space to absorb the weight of what she'd just heard. Her eyes met his, calm, clear, but now shining with something harder than anger. Dignity. "So that's what this is," she said quietly. "You don't need a wife, Benjamin. You need a prop, a shield to stand between you and the world." She took a step closer, holding his gaze without so much as a blink. "And you thought maybe I'd fit the part." Benjamin's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. Emma's voice stayed level, but her words cut clean. "I'm not here to play a role in your performance, and I am not for sale." She turned then, moving toward the doorway, but paused, her back still to him. "And if you ever suggest otherwise again, I suggest you remember who you're talking to." She walked out, her steps sure, her head high. She didn't look back. Benjamin stood alone in the firelight, hands clenched at his sides, jaw set hard, but for the first time in a long while, uncertain. And somewhere between anger and admiration, something else began to smolder. "Tell me, if you were standing in Emma's shoes, would you have walked away too? Or would the promise of security for your child have made you stay? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd truly like to hear what you think." It started as a whisper, the kind of thing people murmur in passing, low enough to pretend it wasn't meant to be heard, but loud enough to make sure it was. In a place like the Carter estate, gossip traveled faster than the breeze that rustled through the rose garden outside. It slid between the grand hallways and polished stone floors, coiling its way through the servants' quarters, the kitchen, the laundry rooms. Small words with sharp edges. "She's pregnant, you know. Emma? Well, isn't that convenient? But between us, who's to say the child is Mr. Carter's?" No one ever pointed a finger directly. Not yet. But the seed had been planted. And Clara Hastings, the ever-gracious head housekeeper, knew exactly how to water it. She never spoke the words herself, not outright. That wasn't her style. Clara had perfected the art of the half-smile, the raised brow, the carefully timed pause in conversation. "Oh, I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding," she'd say sweetly, brushing a stray hair behind her ear. "Though, things did happen rather quickly, didn't they?" She didn't need to accuse. Just suggest. Let the others fill in the blanks. And as the rumor wove itself deeper into the walls of the estate, it eventually reached the one person it was meant to destroy. Benjamin Carter. He confronted Emma late one evening. The room was dim, the shadows long, the glow of the fire flickering against the walls. He stood near the mantel, arms crossed tightly over his chest, his face unreadable, but his eyes sharp as glass. "Is it true?" His voice was quiet. Too quiet. Emma froze, staring at him as if she hadn't heard him right. "True?" she repeated, barely above a whisper. Benjamin didn't move. "The talk around the house, about you, about the child." For a moment the only sound was the soft crackle of the fire. Emma's cheeks flushed, not with shame, but with fury. Her eyes narrowed, locking onto him like steel. "And tell me, Benjamin," she said, her voice steady, though her hands clenched at her sides. "Do you believe them? Do you believe her? The woman who spent years wrapping this house in poison? Or do you believe me?" He didn't answer. Not right away. And in that silence, something between them broke. Emma took a slow breath, pressing her lips together to keep them from trembling. When she spoke again, her words came soft, but they hit like a hammer. "I came here because I had hope. Hope that maybe this arrangement, this life, could mean something more than just survival." She stepped back, her gaze steady, unflinching. "But I see now. I was wrong." And then, as if on cue, a small voice from the doorway pierced through the tension like a blade. "Mommy, why is Mr. Carter making you cry?" Lucas stood there, barefoot, pajama sleeves too long for his arms, his small hand reaching for Emma's. His wide eyes blinked up at her, filled with worry. Emma knelt down, pulling him close, pressing a kiss to his forehead as she fought back the tears burning behind her eyes. Benjamin remained where he was, frozen, a storm of doubt and something like regret flickering behind his eyes, but not strong enough to move him toward the truth. Sometimes the worst wounds aren't made by what's said, but by what's left unspoken. And Clara, well, Clara didn't need to raise her voice to win this battle. She just needed to sit back and let the damage take root. If you're still here, still watching this story unfold, type rumor in the comments below. Let me know who's truly been paying attention, who's caught every twist, every painful turn, and hasn't missed a single moment of what's happening behind these mansion walls. Benjamin Carter was not a man easily pushed to the edge, but tonight he wasn't pacing the polished floors of his mansion like the controlled businessman the world knew. No. Tonight, he moved with purpose, his steps hard, deliberate, echoing down the marble hallway like distant thunder. He didn't knock. He didn't need to. Clara looked up from her desk as the door swung open, calm as ever, lips curling into that soft, practiced smile. The same smile she'd worn for years, the same smile she used to sharpen the knives she never had to hold. "Benjamin," she greeted smoothly, voice dipped in honey. "I wasn't expecting—" "Save it." His voice cut through the air like a blade. He stepped forward, eyes locked on hers, sharp, steady. There was no room left for charm or diplomacy. You're the one behind the rumors. Clara's eyes widened just enough, just the right amount of surprise, just the right shade of innocence. "Rumors?" she repeated softly. "I only shared concerns. Surely, as a father, you can appreciate my caution." Benjamin's jaw clenched. "Concerns," he echoed, bitter. "That's what you're calling it." Clara rose slowly, folding her hands neatly in front of her. She tilted her head, eyes glistening with the soft sheen of false sincerity. "I only meant to protect you. A woman like Emma. Well, who really knows what her intentions are?" Silence. Benjamin stood there, watching her, watching the way she played her part so perfectly, every word measured, every gesture rehearsed. Then, finally, his voice dropped, low and hard. "No, what you meant was to poison. You've been feeding your venom into this house for years, whisper by whisper." He stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. "And I let it happen. I let you stay. I let you twist things. But that ends now." Clara's smile faltered, just for a moment. Her fingers tightened where they laced together. "You're making a mistake," she said, softer now, eyes narrowing. "You don't see her for what she is." Benjamin didn't blink. "No, Clara," he said, voice steady, final. "The mistake was thinking I could trust you." A beat of silence, then his voice dropped even further. "You're done here. You're fired." Clara's face hardened, the sweetness melting away, replaced by something colder. "You can't. I can, and I am." He cut her off, sharp as glass. "Get out." She stood frozen for a moment longer, as if weighing whether to lash out or play victim one last time. But there was nothing left to play. The room had turned against her. Benjamin didn't move, didn't look away. And as Clara finally gathered her things, each motion stiff with fury and disbelief, the door closed behind her with a soft, definitive click. But the damage she'd done? That would take longer to erase. The lies were already out there. The doubt already planted. and Benjamin was left standing alone in the quiet, the weight of his choices pressing hard against his chest. Now tell me, if you were in Benjamin's place, would you let go and walk away? Or would you hold on and fight to make things right? Type, "let go" or "hold on" in the comments. I really want to know where your heart stands. The sky hung low over the outskirts of the city that morning, a pale gray pressing down on the quiet streets. The air smelled faintly of rain and dust, mixing with the scent of fresh bread from the bakery next door. It was a modest place, a small clothing shop tucked between a row of weathered storefronts. Simple, unassuming, the kind of place no one from Benjamin Carter's world would ever think to look. But here he was. He stood outside the glass door for a moment, watching through the window as Emma folded shirts behind the counter, her hair pulled back, sleeves rolled up. She moved with the same quiet determination he remembered, the same grace, the same fire beneath the surface. He pushed the door open, and the soft jingle of the bell above broke the stillness. Emma looked up. Her eyes met his, sharp and steady. No smile, no welcome. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was cool, guarded. She stood straighter, bracing herself. Benjamin stepped inside, letting the door fall shut behind him. "I came to talk to you," he said simply. His tone was calm. Too calm. Emma didn't move. She crossed her arms across her chest, chin lifted slightly, eyes narrowing. "I don't know what there is left to say. Benjamin took one measured step closer. I was wrong." The words were blunt, stripped of defense, and somehow that made them hit harder. "I believed what I shouldn't have," he continued, voice low but steady. "And I let the wrong person whisper in my ear." Emma's expression didn't soften. Not yet. "I know you're pregnant." The air between them thickened. For the first time, Emma's face faltered. Just a flicker. But enough. "It's twins," she said, her voice flat. "And I did it alone. By choice. I didn't need your permission, and I don't need your pity." Benjamin didn't flinch. "I'm not here out of pity." He stepped closer now, eyes fixed on her, the weight of his words anchoring every syllable. "I know what I've done, Emma. I know the damage I caused. But this isn't about me making amends for my own comfort." He paused, the space between them shrinking, his voice softening but never losing its edge. "You don't just need help. The children need a father." She drew in a sharp breath, ready to lash back. But then he finished. "And I need you." The words hung in the air like the last note of a song, heavy, undeniable. Emma's eyes stayed locked on his, searching, testing, waiting for the lie beneath the surface. But there wasn't one. Not this time. Outside, the clouds began to break, and a sliver of light cut through the gray. And there they stood, two people surrounded by everything unsaid, standing at the edge of something neither of them had planned. But neither of them could deny. Now, let me ask you, if you were in Emma's place, could you trust him again? Could you open your heart one more time? Tell me below. Would you give a chance or walk away? I want to hear what you would choose. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind of soft, golden light that casts long shadows across the floor, wrapping everything in a gentle glow. Outside the small shop where Emma now spent most of her days, the world moved on, indifferent. Inside, though, the air felt heavier. Benjamin stood there, not with the arrogance he once carried like armor, but with something closer to humility. His shoulders, once squared in defense, now softened under the weight of what he was about to say. Emma faced him, arms crossed, spine straight. There was no bitterness in her eyes, but there was no softness either. Only the calm strength of a woman who had learned to protect her heart the hard way. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. And then, finally, Emma broke the silence, her voice steady, controlled, but edged with the hurt she refused to let show. "If I give you another chance," she began slowly, every word measured, deliberate, "it will be on my terms." Benjamin didn't interrupt. He didn't argue. He listened. Emma's gaze held his, unwavering. "There will be no controlling me, no treating me like I owe you something. I am not your charity. I am not your shield. If you want a partner, you need to understand what that means." Her words hung in the air between them, sharp, undeniable. Benjamin nodded once, slowly, his jaw clenched, not in anger but in restraint. He knew this wasn't the moment for pride. It was the moment for truth. "I understand," he said quietly, "and I agree." He took a step closer, but still left enough space between them. Space that respected the distance she'd drawn. "I'm not asking to fix this overnight. I'm not asking you to forget what I did. But I am asking—" His voice caught for just a moment before he steadied it again. "For the chance to be more than the man I was." His eyes, for once, were bare. No defense, no calculation. "I want to be your husband," he said, voice soft but certain. "The father to our children, your partner, not your keeper." Emma watched him carefully. She didn't rush to respond. She let his words settle, let the weight of them sink in. And in the pause, you could feel it, that fragile space between trust and doubt, between the past and the future. Finally, Emma gave the slightest nod. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But perhaps the smallest step toward something new. "Then we start over," she said quietly. "Slowly, and on equal ground." Benjamin didn't smile. He only nodded, grateful in a way that words couldn't reach. Because sometimes real change doesn't come with grand speeches or dramatic apologies. Sometimes it comes in the quiet willingness to stand still and listen. "So tell me, if you were Emma, could you open that door again? Would you choose begin again? Or would you walk away for good? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your heart." The seasons shifted quietly, and with them, so did the rhythm of the Carter estate. Gone was the tension that once filled its grand halls. In its place, laughter echoed, bright, honest, unmistakable. The kind of sound that lingers, that softens even the coldest stone. Emma had given birth to twin boys. 2 healthy, beautiful sons, their tiny hands already reaching out to grab hold of the life waiting for them. The news swept through the mansion like sunlight breaking through a long winter. Staff who had once watched from a distance now smiled freely. Rooms that had felt too large, too empty, now filled with soft cries, tiny footsteps, the gentle hum of lullabies sung under breath. Benjamin, who had spent so many years walking these hallways alone, now moved through them differently, slower, more present. Often he could be found in the nursery, sleeves rolled up, clumsily but determinedly holding one child while the other dozed peacefully on his chest. The image of power and control replaced by the simple grace of a father learning how to love out loud. Emma, too, had changed, but not in the way one might expect. She hadn't softened. She hadn't surrendered her pride. She stood steady, proud as ever, but now her smile came easier, warmer. A woman who knew exactly who she was and what she deserved, and as the days unfolded, life at the Carter estate bloomed into something it had never been before. Not perfect, but real. On a late afternoon, as the sun poured gold through the tall windows, the sound of children's laughter spilled from the garden, where Lucas ran ahead, leading the way, while the twins, barely wobbling on unsteady legs, chased after him with determined little steps. Benjamin stood off to the side, watching. Not as the master of the house, but as a father, quietly grateful. Emma sat nearby beneath the shade of the old oak tree, eyes on her sons, her heart full, but guarded, still cautious, still waiting to see if this peace would last. Benjamin glanced toward her, catching her eye. No words were needed. In that moment, the house felt different. Alive, a home, and sometimes that's all any of us really want. Now I'd love to hear from you. Do you believe people can truly change when love is involved? Or do some wounds stay too deep to ever fully heal? Share your thoughts below. Emma gave birth to twin boys, healthy, strong, full of life. The mansion, once heavy with silence, now echoed with laughter and tiny footsteps. Lucas's giggles mixed with the soft cries of his baby brothers, filling every corner with warmth. Benjamin, no longer the distant man of power, held his sons with steady arms and quiet awe. Emma watched from across the room, proud, calm, unbroken, no grand speeches, no promises needed, just the sound of new life and the beginning of something real. And now I want to hear from you. On a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate this story? Did it move you? Did it make you feel something real? Share your score and your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one of them, and your feedback truly means the world to me. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you won't miss the next chapter. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, and for being here. See you in the next story.